Hi, I'm Rebecca Chin, and this is the story of how my passion project, once dismissed as a trivial hobby, became the lifeline that saved my family from financial disaster. My husband and in-laws took their time learning to appreciate it, but life has a way of proving that the underestimated can rise to the occasion. I still remember the day I told my husband, Michael, about my idea. We were in our kitchen, the one his parents had helped us buy in a suitable neighborhood for their son, the VP of operations at Chen Industries. Sunlight streamed through the windows as I excitedly laid out my plan. A luxury, sustainable fashion subscription box. Michael barely looked up from his Wall Street Journal. "Honey," he said, his voice absent-minded, "why don't we focus on planning the next charity gala instead? You're so good at that." His dismissive tone was like a paper cut, small, but stinging. Right on cue, my mother-in-law, Helen, swept in unannounced, her perfectly manicured nails tapping against her designer handbag. "Online shopping," she scoffed. "Darling, Chen women organize charity events and support their husbands. Leave business to the men." I wanted to remind her that I had an MBA from Stanford, but in the Chen family, my degree was treated like an accessory. Nice to mention at parties, but not meant for actual use. That night, after Michael left for another essential business dinner, I sat in my home office and launched my website anyway. I had spent 6 months researching sustainable fashion brands, building relationships with designers, and analyzing market trends. I named my company Greenluxe Box, a subscription service delivering curated, eco-conscious fashion pieces to professionals who cared about sustainability and style. For 3 months, I worked in secret, packing boxes in our garage while Michael was at work. Helen would drop by, see me sorting through inventory in casual clothes, and click her tongue in disapproval. "If you're bored, dear, the hospital board always needs volunteers," she'd say, as if I were a child in need of direction. Then, everything changed. A major fashion influencer featured one of my boxes on Instagram. Orders skyrocketed from 50 to 500 overnight. I hired 2 part-time college students to help with fulfillment, converting half of our 3-car garage into a makeshift warehouse. Michael barely noticed. He was too busy at Chen Industries, where his father was grooming him for the CEO position. At family dinners, the men discussed business while shooting concerned glances at my cluttered garage. "It's just a phase," my father-in-law assured Michael. "Let her play entrepreneur for a while." Then came the Vogue feature. Greenluxe Box was hailed as revolutionary and the future of conscious luxury. Our subscriber base exploded. I leased a warehouse and built a full team. But I still hadn't told Michael how big the business had become. Why bother? He still referred to it as my little project. Exactly 1 year after launching, I was in my office reviewing our latest quarterly report when Michael burst through the door, his face pale. "The SEC is investigating Dad's company," he blurted. "They're freezing all our assets." I looked up from my laptop, where I had just approved payroll for my 60 employees. "What happened?" I asked, my heart racing. Not for our finances, I had those covered, but for the pain in his eyes. "Dad's partner has been cooking the books for years," he whispered, collapsing into a chair. "Everything's gone. The company, our savings, my job. Even this house, it's all tied to company assets." Before I could respond, Helen stormed in, mascara streaking down her face. "It's all gone," she wailed. 30 years of building this family's legacy, destroyed. How will we survive?" Then she turned to me. "Rebecca, you'll have to sell your little jewelry-making business or whatever it is." I almost laughed. "Actually, Mom," I said, flipping my laptop around, "I think it's time we had a family meeting about my little business." The silence in my office was deafening. Michael and Helen stared at my screen, where my company's financial report was displayed. Greenluxe Box revenue, $12.8 million in the last 3 months. Helen clutched her pearl necklace. "This must be a mistake," she whispered, her manicured hand trembling. Michael kept scrolling, his banking background allowing him to process exactly what he was seeing. "These profit margins, this growth trajectory. Rebecca, are these numbers real?" I pulled up our Bloomberg company profile, one I had maintained since my MBA days. "Everything's real," I said quietly, "independently audited and completely legitimate. We're currently valued at over $100 million, and we're in talks with 3 major investment firms for our next expansion round." Helen sank into a chair, her Hermes scarf askew. But you packed boxes in the garage. That was a year ago, I explained, pulling up photos of our new warehouse. We now have a 50,000 square foot fulfillment center outside the city. I haven't packed a box myself in months. I have a team of 60 full-time employees, and we're hiring more every month. Michael's expression was unreadable. Shock, shame, regret. Why did you tell me? He asked softly. I tried, I reminded him. Remember that morning in the kitchen? You told me to stick to planning charity galas. After that, I figured I'd let the business speak for itself when the time was right. Just then, my phone buzzed. A notification from my CEO dashboard. Greenluck's box just hit 50,000 subscribers. I turned the screen toward them. Each subscriber pays between $200 and $500 per month for our curated boxes, I said. For once, my in-laws were speechless. I explained, we have partnerships with over 100 sustainable luxury brands worldwide. That cluttered garage you used to complain about, Mom, that was just the beginning. Helen's shock melted into something more calculating. Straightening her designer blouse, she said, well, clearly, you've learned more from our family than we realized. Her voice took on a coaxing tone. Now, about the SEC investigation, perhaps we should discuss how your success might help the family's situation. Michael interrupted before I could respond. Mom, his voice was steady, and for the first time, I saw something shift in his expression. He wasn't just looking at me, he was seeing me. Not as his wife who needed to be humored, but as a business leader who had built something remarkable. I met Helen's expectant gaze. The SEC investigation is serious, I said firmly, what I've already called Sarah John. Helen gasped. The Sarah John? The corporate lawyer who handled the Martech case. I nodded. She's an old Stanford friend. She'll be here tomorrow to review everything. And yes, I'll help with the legal fees. Helen's face brightened, but I held up a hand. There are conditions. Helen's expression darkened. Conditions. First, I'll help with legal representation, but my company stays completely separate from this. Green Glam Box won't be tied to Chen Industries in any way. Michael nodded slowly. That's smart. Second, I continued, if we get through this, things have to change. No more dismissing my work. No more surprise visits to critique how I spend my time. And Michael, I turned to my husband, holding his gaze. No more letting your family dictate our life choices. Silence settled over the room. Through the window, I saw the city skyline bathed in the golden glow of sunset. Somewhere in the distance, my warehouse was buzzing with activity, my team preparing tomorrow's shipments. I closed my laptop. I have a board meeting in an hour. Our investors in Singapore. Take some time to process this. We can talk more over dinner. As I stood, Michael reached for my hand. His fingers tightened around mine. I'm sorry, he murmured. I should have believed in you. I squeezed his hand gently. There's still time to fix that. But right now, I need to focus on my company's expansion. We're launching in Europe next quarter. Helen opened her mouth, probably to ask about the family's financial crisis, but my phone buzzed again. My assistant's voice came through the speaker. Mrs. Chen, Ford's is on the line. They want to feature you in their 40 Under 40 issue. I saw Helen's eyes widen, her carefully composed demeanor slipping. I smiled. Tell them I'll call back after my board meeting. As I walked out, leaving my stunned husband and mother-in-law behind, a quiet satisfaction settled over me. Success wasn't about proving others wrong, it was about proving myself right. But I knew this wasn't the end of the story. The next few weeks would test our family in ways none of us expected. I said firmly that things hadn't changed. Over the next month, everything moved quickly. My father-in-law agreed to a plea deal that kept him out of prison but required significant financial restitution. Chen Industries was dissolved. Through it all, I watched my husband rediscover himself. One evening, after sitting in on one of my team meetings, Michael turned to me. I want to learn, he said, not just about the business, but about who you are as a leader. If you let me. I didn't just let him, I created a position for him. Not in management, but in our sustainability department, where he could learn the business from the ground up. His background in finance proved invaluable as we expanded into Europe. But more importantly, I saw him come alive in ways his father's company had never allowed. Surprisingly, Helen found her own path too. After the dust settled, she approached me with an idea. Your customers care about sustainability, she said hesitantly. What if we created a foundation? Use your platform to fund environmental initiatives. 6 months later, the Chen Green Initiative launched with Helen as its director. All those years of charity gala planning had finally found a meaningful purpose. The woman who once criticized my cluttered garage was now passionately discussing carbon footprints and sustainable manufacturing with my board members. Today, Green Glam Box is valued at over $500 million, with offices in 12 countries and a subscriber base of over 200,000. But the real success story isn't just in the numbers. Last week, we had a family dinner, not in a fancy restaurant, but in our kitchen. Helen brought homemade dumplings, a skill she'd recently decided to relearn. Michael excitedly shared updates about our new recycling program. Remember when you said Chen Industries didn't support their husbands? I asked Helen as we cleaned up afterward. She laughed, a genuine, hearty laugh, not her old socialite titter. Well, Michael's certainly supporting you beautifully and doing a fantastic job of it. Michael wrapped his arms around me from behind. Best decision I ever made, he said, kissing my cheek, though I still can't believe it took me so long to see what was right in front of me. This morning, I received an email from a young entrepreneur asking for advice. She wrote about how her family doesn't believe in her vision, how they want her to take a safe corporate job instead. My response was simple. Build it anyway. Not to prove them wrong, but to prove yourself right. And remember, sometimes the people who dismiss your dreams just need time to wake up to your reality. As I sit in my office, looking at the photos on my wall of my team, my family, the garage where it all started, I can't help but smile. The journey wasn't about revenge or proving anyone wrong. It was about staying true to your vision, even when no one else can see it. And sometimes the best part isn't the success itself, but watching the people who dismissed you grow into better versions of themselves when they finally open their eyes to what's possible. My mother-in-law still drops by unannounced sometimes, but now, instead of criticism, she brings ideas. Instead of judgment, she brings hope. And really, isn't that the greatest transformation of all? They say success is the best revenge, but I've learned it's not about revenge at all. It's about growth, not just your own, but the growth you inspire in others, even in the ones who never believed in you in the first place. As for that garage where I started, I kept it exactly as it was, cluttered boxes and all. Sometimes, when I need inspiration, I go there and remember where it all began. Because sometimes, the biggest dreams start in the smallest spaces, and the greatest victories come from the moments when everyone else says you can't.